Hello everyone and welcome to my channel YNR Trends. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. In the aftermath of weeks of emotional chaos, whispered accusations and twisted loyalties, Genoa City stood on the edge of yet another scandal as the truth behind Sienna's pregnancy detonated in a way nobody, least of all Noah Newman, was prepared for. Because what began as a secret quietly buried beneath layers of manipulation and desperation erupted into an explosive confrontation that would reshape the relationships, alliances, and futures of everyone involved, starting with the moment Audra. Charles stormed into the Grand Phoenix like a woman fueled by pure truth and fury, her heels slamming against the marble floor as her eyes scanned the lobby for one target, Sienna. And when she spotted her seated casually near the bar sipping tea as if the world wasn't seconds away from burning, Audra marched directly toward her, ignoring the startled whispers from onlookers, and with a voice vibrating with restrained rage said, "We're done pretending," causing Sienna to stiffen, her fingers tightening around the cup, her eyes darting around as though searching for the nearest exit because she could feel that whatever Audra had come to say would not be something she could slither out of with excuses or tears. And before Sienna could even open her mouth, Audra delivered a moment that would replay in Genoa City gossip circles forever. A sharp, echoing slap that cracked through the air, leaving Sienna stunned, breathless, and shaking as the room froze and Audra, breathing hard, hissed, "Stop lying. It's not Noah's baby," setting off the very explosion she had been preparing for ever since she discovered the truth, a truth so twisted and cruel that even for a town accustomed to lies, betrayals, and faked parentage, this one felt like another level of brutal because the baby Sienna had used to latch herself onto Noah, to manipulate his grief, to worm her way deeper into the Newman family, wasn't his, wasn't anywhere near his. It belonged to someone Noah despised, someone he had been manipulated by, tortured by, hunted by. Matt Clark, the same man Noah thought had finally been removed from his life for good. The same man whose fingerprints seemed to stain every terrible event of the past year. And if the truth had only been a simple cheating scandal, the fallout would have been painful but survivable. Yet what made this revelation catastrophic was the calculated nature of it all. Sienna had known, from the beginning, from the very moment she first suspected she was pregnant, that Noah wasn't the father, that the timing didn't match, that the DNA didn't align, and instead of telling him the truth, instead of freeing him to make decisions grounded in honesty, she weaponized the baby as her shield, her lifeline, her leverage, because she believed that if Noah thought he was about to become a father, he would cling to her, forgive her, protect her, put her above everyone else, including his own family. And for a while her plan worked beautifully, twisting Noah deeper into emotional knots, pulling him away from Sharon, creating fissures with Nick, placing him at odds with Victoria, and making him desperate to defend Sienna at every turn, even when red flags were practically screaming at him. But everything began to unravel the moment Audra overheard a conversation Sienna had with a mysterious caller in which she pleaded, "Matt, stop calling me. This can't get out, you promised." And that single sentence sent Audra digging, investigating, connecting dots nobody else had paused long enough to examine. And once she realized Matt Clark might be involved, she conducted her own secret DNA test, using a glass Sienna left behind at society, and what she discovered changed everything. The baby was Matt's 99.7% match, no doubt, no loopholes, no alternate explanations. Just the cold truth that Noah had been living inside a lie crafted from fear and desperation, a truth Audra knew she had to reveal, not because she wanted Noah back or because she hated Sienna, but because she had seen how Noah had crumbled under the weight of his guilt, grief, and manipulated obligations, and she refused to let him be destroyed by a woman who saw his heartache as an opportunity. So after slapping Sienna and declaring the truth, Audra leaned closer and growled, "You tell him. Now. Or I will." And with that ultimatum hanging heavy in the room, she left Sienna trembling, pale and breathless, knowing the avalanche she had tried for months to outrun had finally caught her. And the moment Noah walked into the lobby, face soft, hopeful, eyes filled with the quiet belief that maybe today would be a calm day, Sienna's world collapsed because Audra didn't stay silent. Instead, she turned to Noah and with a steady voice revealed everything, and Noah's expression, once warm, shattered into confusion, horror, denial, and finally devastation as he whispered, "Tell me she's lying." But Sienna, trembling uncontrollably, couldn't speak, couldn't breathe, couldn't think, and when Noah stepped closer, demanding an answer, she finally broke, sobbing and confessing that she never meant for it to go this far. that she thought Matt was gone forever, that she thought Noah needed her, that she believed the lie would fade with time. But all Noah heard was betrayal, manipulation, and the realization that he had fought his entire family, sacrificed relationships, defended Sienna with everything he had, for nothing. And in that moment Noah staggered back as though physically punched, whispering, "You stole my entire life from me," before collapsing into a chair, burying his face in his hands as rage battled heartbreak in a storm so violent it rattled the room. And when Sharon soon arrived, drawn by frantic texts from Audra, she immediately rushed to her son's side, wrapping him in her arms as he broke down, whispering, "Mom, it's not my baby, she lied to me about everything." And Sharon's eyes filled with protective fury as she glared at Sienna with the kind of maternal wrath that could level buildings. But before Sharon could speak, Nick arrived too, having been alerted by Victoria, and the second he processed the truth, he stepped in front of Sienna and unleashed a blistering tirade, demanding to know how she could do something so vile, how she could manipulate his son's trauma, how she could use a child, an innocent unborn life, as a bargaining chip in a twisted game of control. Yet even with the entire Newman family turning their fury toward her, Sienna found herself unable to defend her actions, unable to hide behind her usual excuses, and she finally collapsed to her knees sobbing, "I was scared. Matt threatened me. I didn't know what to do. I wanted Noah to save me." But even that confession only added gasoline to the fire, because if Matt was involved again, it meant Noah's safety had never been secure, that the danger masking itself behind Sienna's secrets had been lurking all along, and Nick immediately demanded to know Matt's location, while Sharon pulled Noah closer, whispering reassurances, and Audra stood silently, observing the destruction her truth had unleashed but refusing to feel guilty for exposing the lie that had been eating Noah alive. And as Sienna continued sobbing, insisting she hadn't meant to hurt Noah, that she loved him in her own desperate, chaotic way, Noah finally rose to his feet, his face streaked with tears but his voice steady as he said, "You didn't love me. You used me. And you used that baby. And I will never forgive you." Words that struck harder than any slap Audra had delivered. Words that sliced through Sienna with devastating finality. And then Noah turned, walked out of the Grand Phoenix with Sharon at his side, Nick following close behind, leaving Sienna collapsed on the floor, her world destroyed, her future erased, her lies exposed, while Audra remained the last one standing, watching Sienna crumble beneath the weight of her own deception, knowing deep down that though this truth had broken Noah, it had also freed him, tearing away the chains Sienna had wrapped around him for months. And as Audra finally walked away, she whispered under her breath, "Now he can start healing." While somewhere in the shadows of Genoa City, the true father of Sienna's baby, Matt Clark, realized the secret he once believed would bind Sienna to him forever had now detonated spectacularly, setting him on a collision course with the Newmans once again, ensuring that this scandal, this betrayal, this revelation was only the beginning of another dark chapter, one that would push Noah to his limits, force Sienna to confront the consequences of her own destruction, and ignite a brutal war between the Newmans and Matt that would reshape the entire landscape of Genoa City. Because in a town built on secrets, betrayals, and second chances, this was one sin that would not be forgiven, one wound that would not heal quickly, and one truth that would echo for years. It was never Noah's baby. In the shocking hours that followed Noah's emotional collapse and Sienna's humiliating exposure at the Grand Phoenix, Genoa City became a pressure cooker of panic, fury, and speculation as word spread like wildfire that the baby Sienna had clung to so desperately, the child she insisted belonged to Noah Newman, was in fact fathered by none other than Matt Clark, a revelation that ricocheted through every corner of town, igniting whispers, reigniting old grudges, and thrusting Noah into the darkest emotional tailspin of his life as he retreated home to Sharon's house, silent and hollow, sitting motionless on the living room couch as if the world had drained all color and purpose from him, while Sharon hovered anxiously nearby, trying to soothe him without overwhelming him, whispering comforting words, brushing tears from his cheeks, reminding him that no matter how destroyed he felt, she would not let him face this alone. Yet Noah didn't respond, didn't speak, didn't even blink in reaction, because the betrayal had carved deeper than anyone could see. Sienna hadn't just lied. She'd used his trauma, manipulated his grief, weaponized his compassion after his darkest moments with Matt, twisting his desire to protect into a leash around his throat, and the realization that he had defended her, trusted her, fought his family for her made him feel like a stranger in his own skin, disgusted with himself, ashamed of his blindness, devastated that he had allowed someone like Sienna to infiltrate his guarded heart while the true architect of chaos, Matt, had been pulling strings from the shadow, shaping every decision, every fear, every tear Noah shed. And as Sharon watched her son tremble with barely contained rage, she vowed silently that Matt Clark would pay for this, deeply and brutally, because no one hurt her child, and walked away. But Noah's torment wasn't the only cyclone in motion, because across town Sienna, still kneeling on the marble floor where Audra had slapped her and Noah had abandoned her, was dragged to her feet by Phyllis, who had walked in just in time to witness the entire implosion and who now regarded Sienna with a mixture of disgust and pity, muttering, "Sweetheart, I've lied before, God knows I've lied, but even I wouldn't pull something like this." And her words sliced through the air as Sienna, disoriented and red-eyed, stumbled toward the elevator, desperate to escape the judgmental stares piercing through her like knives. But she didn't make it far, because as the elevator doors opened, Victoria Newman stepped out and blocked her path, her expression icy as she said, "You're not going anywhere until you tell me how long Matt Clark has been involved." And though Sienna tried to flee, Victoria grabbed her arm and pulled her into a corner of the lobby, demanding answers, her voice rising each time Sienna hesitated, until finally Sienna cracked wide open, admitting through ragged sobs that she had been in contact with Matt for months, that he had threatened her, manipulated her, promised to take care of her if she stayed quiet, and warned her that if she ever told Noah the truth, he would expose things she had done before she even arrived in Genoa City, crimes, debts, and bargains made in desperation that Matt had somehow acquired proof of, using them as leverage to control her. And Victoria's fury burned hotter the longer she listened, because Matt's involvement meant that the Newman family had once again been infiltrated, surveilled, and targeted. And as she released Sienna with a shove and stormed off to warn Victor, Sienna collapsed again, realizing there was no one left to help her, no one left to believe her, no one left to protect her from the storm she had created, especially now that Matt would undoubtedly learn the truth had been exposed, and he would not handle that well, not at all, not when his entire plan had hinged on secrecy, manipulation, and the slow psychological destruction of Noah Newman, a mission he had cherished ever since the day he crawled back from prison, convinced the Newmans had stolen his life and determined to destroy them from the inside out. And as night fell over Genoa City, Victor Newman paced the war room inside the ranch, his jaw clenched, his eyes narrowed to lethal slits as Victoria briefed him on everything Sienna had confessed, and Victor's silence, the kind that came only before he unleashed destruction, made her shiver, because she had only seen that level of cold fury in her father a few times, always before a devastating counterstrike. And when Victor finally spoke, his voice was low, deadly, and absolute. "Matt Clark wants a war. He's got one." Then he called in Michael Baldwin, ordering him to track down Matt's last known locations, his associates, his movements, his finances, every shadow he had stepped into, every person he had contacted. And he instructed Victoria to inform Nick and Adam that the family was on lockdown until further notice, a move that sent ripples of tension through every Newman group chat and security channel, while Nick, still simmering with rage from confronting Sienna earlier, immediately drove back to check on Noah, only to find him sitting on the back porch, staring at the dark sky, gripping a glass of scotch with shaking fingers as he muttered, "I don't even know who I am anymore," breaking Nick's heart in ways only a father could understand. And Nick sat beside him for nearly an hour, saying nothing, simply offering his presence and support as Noah spiraled in silence, replaying every tender moment Sienna had created, every lie she had told whenever he asked her whether she was truly happy, every gentle touch she'd used to manipulate him, wondering how much of it had ever been real and how much had been part of Matt's twisted influence, until finally Noah whispered, "She told me she loved me. She told me this baby saved her life. But it was him, Dad. It was always him." And Nick, voice rough with emotion, answered, "You didn't fail. You were targeted." But that did nothing to soothe Noah's anguish, because in his mind, the difference between manipulation and betrayal didn't matter. The pain was the same. And meanwhile across town, Audra Charles sat in her apartment replaying everything she had witnessed, questioning whether she had gone too far or whether she had done exactly what needed to be done, because even though she felt no remorse for exposing the truth, she did feel the heavy weight of knowing that Noah was now facing the greatest emotional collapse of his life, and she knew deep in her gut that Matt wouldn't let this revelation slide, because the kind of man who used a baby to manipulate two people was the kind of man who would retaliate swiftly. And as she sat on the edge of her bed, she thought about calling Noah, checking on him, offering comfort, but she hesitated, knowing her presence might make things worse, and eventually set her phone aside, unaware that outside her window, a shadowy figure watched her because Matt Clark was already moving, furious, determined, and ready to punish anyone who had jeopardized his plans, starting with Audra, who had been a nuisance from the moment she began digging into the truth, and as dawn approached, Sienna, fearing Matt more than the Newmans, packed a bag to flee town, but before she could slip out of her apartment, she found an envelope taped to her door. No name, no markings, just a single piece of paper inside with a handwritten note that made her legs buckle. "You ruined everything. You know what happens next." And she dropped the note in terror, realizing Matt wasn't just coming for her. He was coming for everyone, and she had nowhere left to run, no allies left, no one willing to believe she was as much a victim as she was a perpetrator. And across town, as the sun rose over the ranch, Victor assembled the Newman family at the conference table, outlining their next steps, their positions, their security protocols, and he turned to Noah, who had barely slept, and said, "Son, this ends now. You will not be destroyed by this man." But Noah, exhausted, bitter, and trembling with anger, lifted his head and said something no one expected, his voice low but dangerous. "No. I'm ending it. I'm done running from Matt Clark. He wants a war? I'll give him one." And in that moment the room held its breath because Noah, broken, betrayed, furious Noah, was no longer the soft-hearted artist struggling to rebuild his life. He was a Newman, hardened by deception, sharpened by pain, and ready to fight in ways Matt Clark could never anticipate. And as Victor stared at his son with a mix of pride and worry, he knew the battle ahead would not be simple, not clean, and not without collateral damage. But the moment Noah declared war, the fate of Sienna, Matt, and the entire future of Genoa City shifted, setting the stage for a deadly confrontation that would push every character past their limits, reshape alliances, destroy trust, and reveal just how far a Newman will go when pushed to the breaking point. All ignited by the truth that the baby was never Noah's, and the fallout had only just begun. The hours that followed Noah's declaration of war against Matt Clark felt like the eerie calm before a hurricane, the kind that made everyone in the Newman family tension-strung and alert, yet strangely united in a way they hadn't been in years because for once, every single one of them understood the stakes. Matt wasn't just another enemy, another corporate rival, another ghost from Victor's past. He was a predator who had targeted the most vulnerable member of their family, infiltrated their lives through Sienna's desperation, and nearly destroyed Noah from the inside out, and that alone made him more dangerous than any foe they had faced in recent memory. As the family strategized, Michael Baldwin arrived with a grim update. Matt had likely left town briefly but returned within the past 24 hours, with unconfirmed sightings placing him near Audra's building. And when Audra herself called Victor in a shaken voice saying she thought someone had been watching her from the street, the tension in the room spiked to a breaking point. Noah inhaled sharply, his anger sharpening into resolve, insisting they needed to warn Audra immediately. But before Victor could even finish ordering new security teams, Sharon stepped forward and said quietly yet firmly, "We're doing more than protecting people. We're ending this cycle before he ruins anyone else." And though her voice trembled, the fire behind her eyes revealed she was done being a victim of Matt's manipulations, because it wasn't just Noah Matt had hurt in the past. He had tormented Sharon too, left scars she had spent years trying to heal. Meanwhile, across town, Sienna paced frantically in her dimly lit apartment, every shadow making her jump, every sound making her heart pound because she knew Matt wasn't going to simply vanish. He would come for her first, punish her for losing control, and she regretted more than ever not confessing the truth sooner, because deep down she had known this moment was inevitable, and she had no illusions that Matt would show mercy. Her only hope, ironically, was the very family she had betrayed. Noah's family, the Newmans, who might despise her but would never sit back and allow Matt to hurt another person under their watch. And as Sienna sat trembling on her couch, clutching her stomach, whispering apologies to the unborn child who never asked to be born into chaos, a sudden loud knock jolted her to her feet, and somewhere across town, Noah felt a chill run through him, as if instinct warned him that the next move in this deadly game was already underway. 2 messages left. Upgrade to ChatGPT Go to keep the conversation going. Upgrade to Go. The pounding on Sienna's door grew louder, more urgent, and she froze in place, her breath trapped in her throat as dread crawled up her spine because the knocks weren't frantic or fearful. They were deliberate, controlled, the kind of knock delivered by someone who already knew they'd be let in eventually. For several agonizing seconds she didn't move, didn't blink, praying it was security or Audra, or even Nick coming to yell at her again. Anyone except the one person she feared most. But when a low male voice drifted through the door, calm, mocking, too familiar, Sienna's knees nearly buckled. "Open up, Sienna. We need to talk about the mess you made," Matt Clark called softly, and the sound of his voice shattered whatever fragile courage she had left. She backed away from the door, shaking violently, whispering, "No, please, no." While across town, Noah suddenly shot up from his chair at the ranch, his chest tightening with instinctive alarm. "Something's wrong," he muttered, grabbing his coat without explanation. Victor called after him, demanding he wait for security backup, but Noah didn't stop, because deep down he knew Matt had just made his first move, and Sienna, despite everything, might be the first casualty of the war he had declared.